There we go. Hello. Even though no one is currently viewing it, but for those of you who end up watching this later on the VOD, welcome. We are going to be talking about some Mesmer things today, particularly Chrono and Virtuoso. And since I am not a big Mesmer player and mainly just have some sort of general knowledge, Enko is here to diverge wisdom upon us.
Okay, let me hop on my Mesmer because I had to restart.
Okay.
I guess I could share my screen at some points too if you want.
Yes. I did that too when Zarg was doing the Necro ones. I would just I looked at the stream on Discord and dragged the window into my Twitch.
Okay. Let me send you. Well, I'll post the builds in chat also, I guess.
Okay. Oh, I forgot I changed to this Raptor.
That's Virtuoso. That one's Chrono. We'll do Chrono second. Virt's actually a lot faster to go over. So.
Okay. I do have a Virt build on this character. Where is it? There it is. Whether it's up to date is another question.
Hi there. Use the console to begin combat testing. If you have any inquiries, come speak to me.
Okay.
Try to make this a little bit bigger so it's readable.
Oh yeah, the Guild War 2 skills. Okay. Oh yeah, I will start the event. There we go. And then let me pop this out to be full screen. And add it as a source.
I need to get back to streaming eventually too.
Yeah, I
been
haven't
like
seen
2
you
months
in a while. Fucking display capture. I mean, I guess whatever. Window capture. Yes, actually, that's exactly what I wanted to grab. Is that one? But let me. There we go.
Okay, so we'll start with Virtuoso. So pretty standard build. Most of the builds that are generally used, just get from Snowcrows. They tend to have builds that are min-max, so all the stats are pretty much set up, and they've already got like the correct utilities on here. We'll go over why they chose those. I like to, when you're getting builds from Snowcrows, though, I always think it's a good idea to actually work on understanding why they made those choices. So that way, when balance changes happen, you can make decisions on your own about like, oh, what should we replace this with until the new builds get posted.
It really helps with understanding the rotations and everything. At least for me, I've noticed if I understand the reason behind certain traits and why you chain certain things together, it makes a big difference in being able to like retain the rotation.
Yeah, one thing I don't like it when people do is they just copy the build and then they just put on their character and then they expect to do well without understanding why those choices are made. So Conde Virtuoso, the entire build pretty much revolves around this trait right here, Jagged Mind. So blade attacks inflict bleeding on critical hits. Percentage of Conde damage dealt heals you. That second part of it makes you pretty tanky as a light class, but the first part is where you get pretty much all your Conde damage from. So most Conde builds usually really don't care about crit chance. Most Conde builds, you focus on getting your expertise up to get 100% Conde duration on your main Condes, and then you focus on Conde damage, and like that's it, right? Power builds usually get your precision up to, so your crit chance is 100%, and then you focus on power and ferocity. So Virtuoso is a little bit different because you also need to max out your crit chance. So you need to get 100% crit chance. That's most important. followed by as much bleed duration as you can, then followed by Connie duration. So you actually have 3 main stats on this one, compared to normally 2 that you have on Connie builds. So you do only need to get to 60% crit chance because you have quiet intensity, which is super strong. So Fury already gives you 25% crit chance, and then quiet intensity makes Fury give you 40% crit chance instead. So you only have to get up to 60%. So if you look at how this is set up, you get exactly 85% bleed duration, and you get exactly 100% crit chance. We put Fury on, you get 100%. Now, the reason why it's at 85% is because you are running Aristocracy relics. So Aristocracy relics, you get 5 stacks, and each stack gets 3% Connie damage or Connie duration, which gets you to 100% bleeds. There was another one that ran a different relic.
Did you use a Keem?
I think we ran a Keem for a little bit, but then a Keem got nerfed,
Yeah,
and then it
did.
ran Fractal Relic for a while.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you ran this one, you had to pretty much run a lot more Viper's gear, and you had to run bleeding duration, food, and stuff like that to make up for the 15%. The problem with Fractal, so this is when you inflict bleeding on an enemy with 6 more stacks of bleeding, you also put Burning and Torment on. The problem with this one is if you hit an add, it does eat the cooldown on this. So on bosses that have only a single target, like there's nothing else to hit, I actually think this does come a little bit better, but then you have to like change your build up. And Aristocracy is just a lot more consistent because this one, it doesn't matter what you hit as long as they have weakness or whenever you put weakness or vuln, you get a stack. It doesn't matter if it's the boss, it doesn't matter if it's an add or whatever. So this one's a lot more reliable. So those are the main things, right? You got to get 100% precision and 100% Connie duration, which you're getting with Aristocracy. So the build setup that is used for this one. So most Connie builds, you start with Viper's gear, and then you add Rampager's gear for precision. And then if you get to 100% precision or crit chance, you get 100% duration on your bleeds. Then you start putting in Sinister gear. This one, you don't have any Sinister gear on it because we basically just got enough with Rampagers to get to 100% and we didn't have any extra room. So this one, you do also need to have precision infusions, which a lot of people don't actually have. The normal infusions you usually see a lot of people have are Might or the Connie damage one.
Yeah, it's
the
got
malign
blind
ones.
and spiteful in there too, and precise.
Yeah, so yeah, if you don't run the spitefuls, you are actually going to be too short.
Yeah, what if you don't run any infusions at all? Because that's probably
so if you don't run any
what
infusions
most
at all,
people do.
you're going to be ending up with 60 precision short,
Okay.
which
So you probably
will it
wanna
kill the build?
swap
No.
the
Like if we
Vipers.
take off all the infusions, will it kill the build? It won't kill it, but you're definitely going to want to take off some Viper's gears and add in more crit chance. So if we
So replace it with some Rampagers.
Yeah, so if we take this off, and we take off all the... Well, let's just replace these with money damage ones. Yeah, so we're now missing like 2.85% crit chance. So you have to make up 60% precision. So what you'll end up doing is you'll drop some Viper's gear, and you'll add in more Rampagers. Now, this will drop your bleeds, your 100% bleed duration, which is fine. Critting is a lot more important on this build than having a maxed out bleed duration. Because the more you crit, the more bleeds you put. If you're missing like 2% on your bleed duration, that's okay. But ideally, though, you would have the infusions. But yeah, you would just swap out. You got to make up 60 of it. So if you just take a look at the differences on here. So Rampagers would give you 110 versus Vipers, which gives you 49.
Yeah.
So hey, we only need 60. That's 61 right there. So that overcaps a little bit, but just changing out one earring for a Viper's piece will make up for the infusions.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so you're overcapped precision by like 1 on this. An efficient way to get the infusions. World vs. World. You can, if you have a lot of World vs. World currencies, you can get those. They will not have agony resistance on them, but they will still give you the stats. You can also, I actually have a lot of ghostly infusions because they're also tradable. So those cost around, what, 50 gold right now or something? Yeah, ghostly infusions are. They're like 60 to 70 gold, but you can also get them from raids. You can get them with magnetite shards. The nice thing about ghostly infusions is that they do not become account bound when you use them. So if you don't want them anymore, you can also just sell them. If you decide not to use that build anymore or whatever. So yeah, Worldless World's probably the cheapest way to do it. If you have the currencies. Otherwise, I think Ghostlies. Ghostlies will work, and they're not. They don't really disturb or look too much. If you go with the polyluminescence, the Halloween infusions, the polyluminescent ones are. They actually went up in price. When did these go up to 100? So the polyluminescence in the past have been were generally cheaper, mainly because they make your character look really ugly. So these used to be like 30 gold, but they all look like they're like 100 gold now. So ghostly infusions will be your best bet.
So it's interesting. So the whole reason why precision is so important on this build is specifically because of that trait that applies bleeding.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so with this one, everything is built around this one. So we'll go over the rest of the traits and what counts as a blade and everything like that. So why did this build work? So you're getting bleeds from Jagged Mind whenever you crit with the blade attack. Okay, you're also getting bleeds whenever an illusion crits,
Ooh.
right? Okay,
That's nice.
so Mirage changes your clones to blades. Okay, so when you use your F1 skill, so you look at Blade Song Harmony, right? This will shoot out 5 blades, but these also count as illusions. Or they're supposed to. Okay, so they will proc this. They'll proc Jagged Mind when they crit, so you'll get 5 stacks of bleeding on here, or 8 and a quarter. Well, let's crank this up to 5. So, we're gonna reset to the correct stuff. Okay.
Oh, with the, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we're 100% bleed, 100% crit chance. So every blade from Jagged Minds will do 9 seconds of bleeding per blade, right? So that's per crit. So this is 5 blades when you have 5 blades out here when you use Blade Song Harmony. On top of that, it'll also trigger sharper images. So that's another 5 stacks of bleeding for 10 seconds. Damn. So just with one F1 with 5 stacks, you'll get 10 stacks of bleeding out. Okay, so your phantasms also count as illusions, which is why you take Phantasmal Fury. So if you look at Swordsman will strike, I think it does 8 times. Well, it's a Blurred Frenzy. It does Blurred Frenzy, and it also does a leap attack. So if we take a look at what Blurred Frenzy does, Sword main hand. So Blurred Frenzy does 8 strikes. Okay. So 8 strikes plus the leap attack. The leap attack is basically the sword 3 leap. Okay, so it does 9 hits total. And those 9 hits will proc off of sharper images. So you'll get 9 stacks of bleeding per swordsman you summon. Okay. And then if you take a look at the Warden does 12 hits. So this does 12 stacks of bleeding. So one thing with the Warden, though, it won't always aim at your target. It'll just hit, it'll throw axes at whatever's nearby. So you do lose some damage if you are on fights with ads like Belguardian and such. This also has an issue where it has projectile nullification. It will destroy projectiles. So if you use this on Matthias, if your Warden spawns, it can block the projectile attacks you want to reflect. So you do have to be aware of that. Normally, like a lot of times this thing will usually spawn near you, but if you're trying to stay in melee range for your F5 for Blade King Requiem, this might spawn right next to Matthias. So you want to play it safe. You could just drop the focus on and bring a pistol instead. And if you take a pistol, then Phantasmal Duelist, it will do 8 illusion attacks. So this one does 3 strikes from you, and then it summons a duelist that shoots it 8 times. So this will do 8 seconds or 8 stacks of bleeding. but Warden definitely is the best one. Well, Swordsman, then Warden. Okay. So that's where most of your bleeds are coming from. Dragon Mind, and then you have sharper images from all your illusion skills. Okay, so this build, because it does phantasms, and Swordsman and Wardens are generally power phantasms.
Yeah.
So you're bringing Security Complex, so that your power damage is also buffed. You have Fencer's Finesse, so that you get extra ferocity. This one is actually really nice. This trait here for Master Fencer, you maintain a little bit over 50% Fury uptime for your sub squad.
Oh, that's nice. That's good to know.
Yeah, so 8-second cooldown, and it gives Fury for 5 seconds to you and allies around you. So that got buffed. It used to just be you, but now it's an AOE Fury around you. So if you have 2 Virtuosos in a sub squad, you should have 100% Fury just because they're attacking. And you give yourself Vigor 50% of the time. That's not really a big deal on this, but it's a minor trait, so you can't really change it. So as I said, you're bringing illusions for Shatterstorm. So Shatterstorm makes your F1 become an ammunition skill, and it does 2 attacks instead too. So you have 2 charges instead. So you basically can get this out twice. And because this build generates so many blades, you'll actually end up using all of those. So you get blades. Let's see, where is it? Yeah, so right here, every 5 bleed stacks you apply, you get 1 blade back. Okay, so for your F1, right, we talked about you get 5 stacks of bleeding from this, and you get 5 stacks of bleeding from this. So just when you hit F1 with 5 blades, you'll get 2 blades back just from using this, because it does 10 stacks of bleeding. Okay.
So you'll use 1 blade, and then get 2 blades.
It'll consume all 5 of your blades.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And because each blade applied 2 stacks of bleeding, and every 5 stacks of bleeding you get a blade back, you'll get 2 blades back every time you use F1 or your F2. So on top of that, because you're also bringing mainly Disillusioned, every blade that hits will also do Torment. So on top of the 10 stacks of bleeding, you're also doing 5 stacks of Torment. Okay, and then your F2 will do the 10 stacks of bleeding, 5 stacks of torment, and then 10 stacks of confusion. Because each blade that hits will do 2 stacks of confusion. Okay, so let's see, what traits do we not go over? Okay. Yeah, illusions is just really good with this because like this makes your shatter skills come back faster. This gives your phantasms more damage. This gives torment all your shatters. This gives you a buff whenever you summon. So something I do need to check with this. So it says creating an illusion increases your outgoing damage. This is also something that might come into play for sharp images too. But creating an illusion means your phantasms and clones, right? Blades, they might have changed this where blades don't count as.
It does say.
Yeah, blades might not count.
In game, it says Virtuoso triggers when stalking a blade.
Which one?
That one you were talking about in game when you mouse over it. Sorry, for compounding power. Isn't it the one you're talking about? That one? Oh, it says it right there.
Yeah, so when it stalks a blade, you get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you, I guess when you generate a blade, it's considered creating an illusion. But I do need to double check to see if they actually made it so that
before you put
these things actually count as illusion clones also, so that you'll actually get 10 stacks of bleeds.
Before you get boons and stuff on yourself, I was just gonna have us re-enter really quick.
Okay, I just want to check something real quick.
Okay.
Ooh. Yeah, I think you do get 10. Yeah, so if you look at this build, everything here synergizes with each other. So that's one of the reasons why, like Virtuoso, it does a lot of damage. It's pretty tanky because you heal yourself for 3% of all your Connie damage you deal. It's 1200 range attacks. Like all your skills in this build are 1200 range except for your swordsman. Your swordsman is 900. Oh wait, no, this is 1200 also. Illusion of Riposte is 900. This is 12. This is 12. You have a melee skill with Blade Turn Requiem, which is actually really strong now because there is no cast time on it. Yeah, so
that's
all your
nice.
skills are 1200 now. If you bring a duelist I think
That's
is
so
what's
low,
900.
1200.
Yep.
I'm doing the
Oh no,
prompt to have us
duelist is
re-enter.
1200 also. Yeah, everything under is 1200 except for Temporal Curtain and Blade Requiem, basically. The Blade Requiem 600 range. You can cast it at 600 and then it'll pull at 600. So this one actually, you can actually pull something at 1200 range away from you, but it'll only pull at 600 range to the Temporal Curtain.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the synergy with this one, so you get Fury from here for 15% extra. This gives your Phantasm's Fury, and you give Fury to yourself and allies. So that's easy Fury uptime. Whenever you crit hit, which is going to be always on this, you're going to be dealing bonus damage with it. Like, you don't really have anything. These other traits here don't really do anything for you. So, like, Ineptitude could do a little bit of confusion, but you really don't have any like your interrupts on this build. You only have 3 CCs, technically 4, but one of them you really don't want to use. So superior to complex, this just has you deal more power damage. Since daggers are actually both a power and a Kandi, it's both a power and a Kandi weapon. That will still buff you up a bit. But this is one of the reasons why this build does so much power damage. Like, Kandi Virtuoso is actually more of a hybrid build than anything else because it's like 65% Kandi damage and like 35% power damage.
Does that make it particularly good for like most encounters in that sense? Because it's got really good range and then it's got sort of that hybrid DPS.
Well, I guess that's another discussion of what's considered a Kandi versus power fight. With the current meta right now, the only time that you really actually need Kandi is Veil Guardian, where you're actually required. You should actually are required to bring Kandi to Veil Guardian because of the Red Guardian. The entire argument between power versus Kandi builds or power versus Kandi bosses, it's more based on ramp up time.
Yeah. That
So.
makes sense. Oh, which how quick does it ramp up on Virtuoso?
This build ramps up very fast. You get to like
nice.
50 stacks of bleeds in like 9 seconds.
That makes sense with all the crits happening. Is it?
Yeah.
Do you know if it's like the Kandi build that ramps up the fastest out of all the Kandi builds?
I'd have to compare it to Firebrand, but this one ramps up pretty fast.
Yeah, Firebrand's a little bit weak right now, as far as I'm aware. So probably.
Firebrand's strong. Just people don't like to play it.
Probably people are bored of it. It's been around for a while. I was gonna go ahead and do the prompt to get us back in that training area if you're ready to confirm it.
Go. And then we're waiting on the other person.
There we go.
Yeah, so Mesmer in this aspect's a little bit weird because Kandi Virtuoso ramps up like a power class. Power Chronomancer ramps up like a Kandi class.
Weird.
Yeah. So, but yeah, going back to power versus Kandi, yeah, so it's about ramp up time, right? So fights that have short phases, or have things where that interrupt you, like Sazazar, Samurag, those are generally been considered power fights because you want to burst out all your damage and then the boss goes like invuln, right? So then you basically reset your rotation, so you get that opening burst constantly. Like Veil Guardian has phases, but Veil Guardian also has lower armor, so it takes more damage from power fights. Dorseful has fairly short phases. Sabbatha has phases, but there's also fights in between it.
Yeah.
Like you have to kill the champions too, so you don't have any you don't really have any downtime during that. Salazar has downtime because of break bars. Matthias has downtime because of the bubble, but it's not that often. So that's really what determines if a boss is power versus Kandi. But this only matters if you're in like a min-max group that you're trying for times. Mm-hmm. Like if you're just with a group of friends, you're just going through it, you're just looking for clears, you're not working on times, I wouldn't even worry about power versus Kandi. I would just have your players play what builds that they can play the best. Like the only caveat for that is for Veil Guardian, you need some Kandi because of the Red Guardian. And like if you're when people are talking about power versus Kandi fights, wait, go say again.
Isn't power preferred for KC as well, or CA? Well, and CA, KC and CA.
It depends on your group.
Interesting. So the Condi can work on those technically.
It can, but Condi works on CA and KC if your group's bad at DPS.
Oh, so like if the DPS is slower. So essentially, if you're phasing faster, it's better to do power.
Yeah, the shorter your phases, then the shorter your phases, the more you start leaning towards power. So the reason why on KC in particular, why Condi is generally seen as bad, is because if you're a good player, if you're doing the orbs, even with one orb, KC will usually phase in about 5 or 6 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, every Condi build, like Necro, for example. Actually, I haven't timed Necro in a while, but Scourge, it used to take 19 seconds to ramp up, like to where its DPS leveled out, and then that where you start reaching its max thing. Okay, so if you are phasing it in 6 seconds with a power class or with a power comp, like you get like 6 attacks off, and then what'd you do?
Yeah.
Right. So, but if everybody's playing Condi, it might take longer, right? And the more orbs you do, also it'll phase faster. Also, if you're skipping the orbs, you're just doing like the no break bar strat, then like Condi kind of works out fine. But it all depends on your phase timings.
Okay.
So if you look at Veil Guardian, if your group is lower in damage and it's taking a while to kill it, like let's say if most people are finishing each phase under 20k DPS, power versus Condi doesn't really matter. Like same thing on Gorspol, same like on all the fights with phases. If you're phasing slowly, then it doesn't really matter. But if your group is like that, like this is a static group or a consistent group, then it would probably make sense for everybody to work on their DPS if you're in that kind of situation. So if we talk about when you hear people refer to a fight as a power fight or a Condi fight, they're talking about for an optimized group. So like Slazar is generally considered a power fight because of the short phases, but because of how Condis work on that fight, Condi builds like I can finish with like 25, 26k on Slazar with a Condi build, or especially with a Virtuoso. But that's because of how Condis work on that fight. So he cleanses when his break bar starts, but you can start applying Condis right after that. So you can already get through your ramp up time while the bar is being broken. So that like when he comes out of his break bar, your damage is already ramped up. Like Matthias, it's kind of the same deal with that one. Like he never cleanses his Condis, so while his bubble's up, you can still apply Condis to him. They just don't deal any damage to him. So Condi builds on Matthias you can play a little bit more brain dead because you just follow your rotation. Because when his bubble comes up, you just keep attacking. You just keep doing what you normally would do. If you're a power class, you stop attacking and you reset your rotation so you can do your opening burst when the bubble goes down again. Right? So you have to think about it a little more.
And yes, Ren, the reason why Q1 is usually power preferred is because the typical strat is to skip the pylon that gives him a boon that reduces the amount of Condi damage he takes.
Yeah. So that on Kadim 1 pylon gives resolution, which increases Condi damage. One gives stability, and then the other one gives protection. So protection, that will protect. That stops like everything that's physical damage. Protection not on here.
Why is it not on there?
Oh, maybe it's because it should be on here because there's some things that like if you have protection, you get it.
Okay,
it changes
well, it's
it
down there. Yeah, there we go.
So this is incoming damage reduction.
Which is specifically only power damage reduction, right?
Well, that's the weird thing. It should be that, but they've usually made it a point if it's only power damage, it'll specifically say strike damage.
Oh, okay.
If it just says damage reduction, it usually means everything.
Okay.
But because we have another boon that does 33% specifically incoming Condi damage, they probably just didn't change the tooltip on this.
Okay.
Yeah, so Kadim 1, like, I think the strat that they designed the fight to be in, you were supposed to kill all 3 pylons, right?
Yes, yeah.
But because a lot of groups, they will either kill protection and stability, or just protection. If they've got high enough DPS to skip the pylon, then they'll just ignore, or to skip the break bar, they'll just ignore stability. Yeah, so that one is power because of how most people do it. But if you killed the resistance pylon, that doesn't really make a difference. Right. So, but yeah, if you go through all the fights, like VG Gorsfall considered power ones usually. Salazars are considered power usually. KC's power most of the time. Zera, I don't know. I think Zera doesn't matter which one you do. It's a long enough phase that Condis are fine, and it's a short enough phase that like power is fine too. Let's see. Wing 4. With a good group, they're all power fights. With the average group, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Condi or power will work on those. Wing 5. SH, you usually see Condi on there because you're moving around a bit. Power classes typically do not like to move because a lot of their things either root them or the rotations is harder to pull off cleanly if you're moving around. But I've seen some power classes do okay there, but Condi's just a lot easier to play there. Deimos doesn't matter, power or Condi works.
Isn't Soul Solar 4 also partially because of TD cleave?
Yeah, it makes it a little bit safer if you have your group doing Condi damage. Because like for example, there's been some SH runs that I've done in the past where we had like a Bladesworn in the group. And if they're not like acutely aware of the TD positioning and what they're doing, like they would immediately delete the TD.
Yeah, so that's a Bladesworn issue, not a power issue.
Well, yeah. To be fair, it's more specifically Bladesworn.
Like with good groups, they're going to have that problem no matter the comp. If the TD gets near SH, it's going to die.
Okay.
Like even with the Condi builds. Like especially with Virts, like Virts, since they cleave, everything cleaves except for Warden.
That's true.
Like if it gets near it, you're going to stack on 40, 50 bleed stacks on that thing, and it's going to die pretty quick.
With Virt and TD before, but not usually not any other Condi classes. But that makes sense then with just how quickly it stacks and how much it crits.
Well, Firebrand had the same issue. If you have a lot of good Scourge players, you'll have the same issue. It really kind of depends on your pusher.
Mm-hmm.
So with that one, it's kind of like team dependent. But honestly, like Condi, I would actually say Condi builds right now I would say are easier to play than a lot of power classes.
Yeah.
Especially ones like Virtuoso. It's been a while since I went through like what I thought were the easiest builds in the game, but Condi Virtuoso has always been like the top 3 easiest classes.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I really like about Condi classes is that because in a general sense, the rotation itself isn't as rigidly structured because you're not necessarily doing like certain skills that like trigger a certain condition to increase like a power damage at a certain point or whatever. They're a little more forgiving for the rotation. Like I feel like I've seen that a lot of Condi builds are just like, oh, you just like press stuff off cooldown, just kind of press things or whatever in whatever order you want. Like if you want to be really base like version of it to start, and you'll still do decent damage. Whereas on a power build, if you do that, it's not as forgiving.
Yeah, most power builds, your rotations are set up so that you stack as many of your damage buffs, and then you're doing a burst during those damage buffs. Or you're trying to maintain a damage buff through your rotation. Condi builds, they're all set up to apply as many stacks as possible, and if you happen to get a damage buff somewhere, then great. Because the way that the damage is calculated, so power damage is calculated with whatever boons and Condis are on the boss at the time the strike happened. Condis are calculated when the tick happens. So if you apply, you apply 50 stacks of bleeding to a boss, right? 50 stacks of bleeding are ticking, and then resistance gets applied to the boss, then it'll get reduced by 33%. It didn't matter if that resistance when you applied the bleeds or not. It matters when the bleeds actually ticked. Versus with power, if the boss had protection when you actually hit the boss, then the damage gets reduced. If the boss didn't have protection when you hit the boss, it doesn't happen, right? So power damage, because the damage is immediate, it's all your rotations are built around buffing your stuff, like stacking your buffs, and then doing bursts in those. So that's why, like with like Dragon Hunter, you're doing all your damage buffs and then doing your burst in that thing, and then you're kind of just waiting to reset for that. Like Soul Beast is like that, Dragon Hunter is like that. But all the rotations are set up so you're basically fitting in a burst during when you're buffed up. Kandi classes, you just go and just basically get everything on there, and then you apply damage buffs to yourself when you can.
Side note is that's something that I find very interesting about Power Untamed is that it doesn't have a very specific burst window, and as a weirdly very like just sort of consistent amount of damage that it does, which is something that I had not encountered on a power build before.
Well, for Untamed, it's kind of just that it can maintain its buffs, and that you can. So, by virtue of the rotation that, like the standard rotation that's been set up, you kind of just maintain your stuff as it is. Yeah. So nowadays, most of the Kandi build or most of the power builds are like that. That a lot of people don't understand. Like that's why the rotation is set up like that, to maintain your modifiers.
Okay.
While going through this. So, the guys that make the rotations, they're aware of this, and they basically have the rotation setups to try to keep your modifier uptime up as much as possible. For people that just learn the rotation by watching the videos but don't understand why they're doing the rotations, then it just feels like, oh, this just feels good. But usually if you notice you're doing a lot less damage than somebody else, it's usually because you're not maintaining a modifier. Like you're not understanding like some of your traits.
Yeah.
So with Kandi Virtuoso in particular, the things that usually will cause people not to have good damage on this, even though this is one of the easier classes or one of the easier builds in the game to play, is they're usually missing precision. That's usually the big thing. They're usually missing precision, or they're not casting their phantasms as often as possible. So we kind of went over the traits real quick.
Question about one of the traits, actually. That one in particular. So because there's the option below it, Sharpening Sorrow, and that increases the expertise that you get with Fury. So I'm kind of surprised. Oh, right, because bleeding is already at 100, and it doesn't really matter for your other conditions?
Well, so the other reason why you bring this, so because this gives you 3 seconds of Fury when the Phantasms are done, this gives you 5 seconds of Fury. On your own, you maintain 100% Fury uptime. You don't have to worry about anybody else doing it. This actually overcaps you on Fury because you're not, but it will overcap you eventually when you keep it summoning all your stuff, because you're doing 2 Phantasms like every 8 seconds basically, right? Basically every 9 seconds, right? So, but this one, since that the Phantasms, you summon them and then they finish their attack and then they go away, they launch a blade, right? What do blades do? They do bleeds. So this will actually do another stack of bleeding on top of what the Phantasms is already doing. This one, all it's doing it's giving you extra expertise, which you don't need. Oops. And then this one, you get boons, which hopefully you already have.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one, you take this one because it does it does an extra attack for your Phantasm. So every Phantasm you do an extra bleed stack. Plus a little bit of power damage. Okay, so
should we go over the skills, either the utils and the elite there?
Yeah, just looking at this real quick. Yeah, so basically when you guys when you're trying to set up a build, if you compare it to so you have 3 options, right? You always want to take the option that will work best in the build, right? Most of the time for a particular build, there's going to be a clear-cut choice that you take. There's some builds where maybe one will work sometimes in some situations, and the other ones will work in other situations. And those, if you know your traits well and you know the situations, then you can adjust for those. Duelist Discipline, if you brought a pistol, might seem like it's good, but then your Phantasms aren't critting all the time, which means they're not rocking sharp images, and so you actually end up losing a lot of bleeds, even though this does make your Duelist do more bleeds. So Duelist Discipline, I kind of wish they would buff this, but but yeah, you definitely should know all the traits you have, in case you ever do need to change it. Virtuoso, this setup right here, there's not really a better one for this particular setup. If you're running the chaos setup, and you're dropping illusions, and that one's actually even easier to play because you don't use phantoms at all. But
Wait,
it has some
dropping
different
illusions instead of dueling?
The reason why you don't drop dueling is because this is too strong.
The bleeds.
Sharper images is way too strong.
Well, now I've got to compare.
Well, actually, actually never mind. You would drop dueling on this because you're not doing your phantasms. So you want to have the shatter stuff, and then you would end up bringing like master fragmentation because you're not doing phantasms. Phantasmal force doesn't do anything, and you don't have a scepter.
Okay.
But honestly, the chaos build, I don't even know if the chaos build works anymore with the changes they made to chaos. Because the damage modifier from that is from maintaining chaos aura now, not from having regen. So it's going to get kind of weird because you can't really maintain chaos aura with this unless you bring a staff.
Mm.
So yeah, I think the chaos build actually might be dead. I haven't looked at it in a while.
Tracy's been running the chaos build a little bit. Seems like it's been doing okay.
I'd have to take another look at it just because like I don't know how it performs with the changes to the chaos mastery.
Yeah,
or the chaos
I don't know
trait.
how it compares to the dueling build like DPS wise.
Okay, so with food on this one, we should note that this does take potato and leek soup for the 100 precision. So if you wanted, this is usually where I see a lot of virtuosos. They're losing damage because a lot of times they're
eating the ascended,
like koi cakes, or they're running the ascended food, which is conning damage expertise.
Yeah.
So they're missing 100 precision. So if you're missing 100 precision, you're missing 5% crit chance. So you can always tell that this is the problem. You look at someone's food, they're running this, and then if you go into Arc DPS and you look at their stats, and their crit chance is at like 94, 95%. So you have to make sure you're either running the right food on this. Where is it? If you're not running this, you need to adjust that, like bring more Rampagers gear. So this would give you 51 more precision. Like if you really don't want to have to run this, you can adjust your traits and drop Vipers and bring more Rampagers. But this one gets you to exactly 100%, which is why it's set up like this.
Okay.
Oh, that should not be agony. Ignore that. That's the wrong one.
Noemi is saying in chat here that Chaos is getting nerfed soon too, isn't it?
They're changing Chaos again because Mirage became way too strong with it. So they're probably nerfing it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mirage is sitting at like 46k or something.
Yeah.
Actually pretty crazy.
It's pretty nuts.
Okay. So as far as your skills go, you're running dagger main hand on both weapon sets. You got a sword and you got a focus. As I said, with the focus, you could change that for a pistol for Matthias, but I've also have run a pistol on Veil Guardian before because a lot of times your warden will go after the seekers instead. But if you bring a focus, you also have a pull, and if like your seeker control with your group is not very good. So all 1200 range, as we said. You got this one, which is just your auto attack. You have your 2 and 3. So 2 will shoot out attacks at your target, and then you'll throw out 3, and then the 3 will come back. So it'll actually hit your target, going out and then coming back again. This one will also give you a blade. Okay, so one more thing to note too. Since we talked about blade attacks inflict bleeding and crit hits, what counts as a blade attack? All your dagger skills count as blades. So your 1, 2, and 3 count as a blade. Your phantasm doesn't count as a blade, but it will do 1 blade attack because of phantasmal blades. All of your blade songs, except for distortion, count as blades as well. So this will, each time, for every blade hit or every blade that's consumed, it'll do that many. F3 will only do 1 blade though. So this will shoot out 5 blades. This shoots out 5 blades. This only shoots out 1 attack. So this one, the scaling per blade, it does more CC damage per blade, but it only does 1 attack. So this one only does 1 stack of bleeding and 1 stack of torment if you use it for damage. So if you're doing this for damage, like these are all used up, this is all used up. If you do this, this will do 1 stack of bleed, 1 stack of torment. So if you don't care about your CC, it doesn't matter what blades you use this with. You can just use this with 1. Distortion, same thing. As long as you have 1 blade on it, it'll do one bleed stack, or it'll do 1 torment stack actually, because you don't actually hit your enemy with anything on this. So yeah, F3 distortion or the CC scales off the number of blades, and with F4 the length of the distortion scales off of the number of blades. Your F5, the what will scale is how long the blades are spinning around you. I don't remember how long, like if it was like, I think it used to be a second longer for each one, but I don't know if that's actually the case because they changed it. Okay, but yeah, so these count as blades, but your offhand stuff does not count as blades. Your elite 1,000 cuts, every strike with this also counts as a blade. So 10 blades, which will do 10 stacks of bleeding, which means you'll get 2 stacks of 2 blades back because of Bloodsong. Okay, so yeah, this one, unstable blade sworn, it'll put like an AoE field on the ground that will like, it'll just shoot blades out at anything near it. So if you put this right on top of your target, it will actually hit twice at you. The storm itself that you put on the ground will hit your target, but then it'll also shoot the blade out. Riposte, actually, this is a really, really cool skill. It's a block. So if you cast this and you just let it channel, it's a 2.5 second block. Okay, if it blocks something, you then follow it up with a 1/2 second evade. Okay, so things like Veil Guardian's blue circles. You have 6 of the teleport fields that show up on the ground. Those all go off at the same time. So if you use Sword 4 to block that, you'll block 1, and then you'll evade the other ones.
That's nice.
So unlike with like Aegis, where you'll block 1 and then the other 5 will hit you and teleport you, this one, because it follows it up with a 1/2 second evade, you also will you'll just avoid damage afterwards too. This also works on like Deimos's oil fields. The oils on that one, like if you run into one, you'll do a block and then you have a 1/2 second evade, and then you can dodge again after that. So you should never be triggering oils on a Mesmer if you have a sword. You have a sword and you have distortion, so you should never trigger an oil on Deimos. This can also help you like when the hands come up after when you phase and all the hands are coming to Deimos. If you block 1, you'll evade for 1/2 second afterwards, so you have a little bit of reprieve from taking damage from those. But if you double tap this, so you use the flip over skill, this will then do a 2-second daze. So 200 CC on that one. The other thing too with Illusion Riposte, this matters more for power builds, but when you block with this, the damage that you do back, it actually is a pretty strong hit.
Yeah.
It's also the damage also happens on whoever you have targeted. It's not whatever attack you blocked, it's whatever you have targeted. So if you have something targeted and something else attacks you and you block that attack, the damage will go to your target. It's a little weird thing because the damage should go back to wherever the attack came from, but that's apparently not how the skill works. So on Deimos, like I know on one of the speaker strats when we were doing Chronomancer, we were using this to block a hand or to block like a field and just get extra damage out. Because as I said, this hits pretty hard. If you look at the tooltip, it's 1544 power damage on there. Look at all your other skills. Like it does. That's baseline 1544.
Yeah,
these other ones are all
nuts.
like 400. Your swordsman, each strike's only 400. Right. So this the counterattack on this deals as much damage as 4 of the hits of the swordsman does. Actually, like almost 5 of the hits of the swordsman. Okay, and then you got Warden. We talked about this. This is it will destroy projectiles that go near the Warden. Unfortunately, they don't really. You can't really control where the Warden spawns. You got Temper Curtain. So the range on this is how far away you can cast this. So this will give swiftness to anyone touching it. It'll cripple any enemies that are touching it. But then the activate on this, it'll do a 600 range pull towards the center of the temporal curtain.
It's a Giga Chad skill there. It's just like, it's so nice to have. In particular on a Mesmer, has some of the best pulls in the game because of temporal curtain. You can just yoink a whole group of mobs in together using temporal curtain, and it is chef's kiss.
I actually like it how it worked better before. So now it always pulls it towards the center of wherever the temporal curtain is. It used to just yank things 600 range towards the center, but like if you put it right next to it, it would still send it flying 600 range. So if you were trying to group things up, you actually had to be particular with your placement.
Interesting.
But because like you basically had to put them, you wanted to put the temporal curtain in a place where everything was 600 range away from it, so they would all pull to the same spot. Nowadays, wherever you put this, it'll always pull towards the center of it, no matter how close or near or far away it is from it.
I feel like it's
so it's a little, it's a little bit less of a skill expression. They made it easier to use. All right, Signet of Ether. So when you activate this, it will reset your phantasms. It'll reset your phantasm even if it's like if you're on your focus and you use this, it'll reset your swordsman too. So if you go back to swordsman, this will immediately be up. You just don't see it. The other thing that's nice about this too is that if you don't activate this, then every single time you stock a blade or summon a phantasm, this will heal you. So if you're doing kiting on Pylon Kiting on Kadim 2, for example, you just like you don't have to change anything in your build. You could just not activate this, and the passive healing from this will keep you up. Because between the passive healing on this and then the passive healing on Jagged Mind, as long as nobody misses an orb, like this will heal you more than enough. You do lose some damage though because you're not resetting things. Domination. Usually you do not cast this. This is just straight up 180 Condi damage stats stat points. This is an emergency CC though. This is a 300 CC. That's a 1200 range. So I would only use this if someone's going to die if you don't. Okay, and then you got Signet of Illusions. This is to reset your F skills. So you use all your F skills, primarily your F1, F2, and your F5, and then you can use this to reset all the skills so you can use it again. This is also the first skill that you would drop if you need to bring something like Blink or Feedback or something to do with mechanics. This would be the first thing you drop. And then Signet of Midnight, 180 expertise. You do need this to reach that 100% bleed duration. Otherwise, you'll lose some damage, but it's also a stun break. So
that's nice. So
I wouldn't
use that if you really need to.
Yeah, I wouldn't use it unless you really like. I would use this if you're going to die or the group's going to wipe if you don't break out of its stun.
Like if you get
like likewise
with a Tide Pod during Largos and you also get hit by a bubble, that's a great time to use it.
And just be aware that you lose some damage for 30 seconds while this is resetting. Though for Largos, if you get hit with a bubble and you get lifted, on Largos CM, yes, because you'll probably die from the wave. But if you're not gonna die, it's kind of up to you if you're gonna break out of it or not. Like
as
sacrifice.
Long as you're not gonna drop a Tide Pod in the middle of the arena or something like that. Because I've had that happen multiple times where I happened to get the tide pool and a bubble, and then I was like, sorry. So you just drop it in the middle of the platform, and it kind of sucks.
Yeah, I just mentioned this because a lot of people don't realize that Midnight's a stun break, and they don't realize Domination's a CC, because it's not used in the rotation. That's another thing a lot of people do when they're just memorizing the rotation by watching the videos or by reading the write-ups. If it's not used, they don't know what it does because they don't look at it. All right, then you got 1,000 cuts, 1,200 range attack, instant cast, so you can cast it while casting other skills. Your other options is Moa Signet Humility. It does 600 CC when you use this. So if your group's is struggling with CCs, you would do this. Other places you might use this in raids is on like Escort. You can use this on the wargs and they'll turn into a Moa instead.
Yeah. Yeah.
which means they don't one shot. They don't one shot Glenna, but they'll usually one shot players.
How much
Because
of a DPS loss is it to swap that out? Like, if your group was struggling with CC, should it be like, okay, I'm not going to do it unless we're really struggling, or is it like we're kind of struggling, it's not going to change my DPS that much?
well, it depends on the fight. Because keep in mind, this has a 60-second cooldown.
Oh, this doesn't turn a
So,
kitty golem into a MOA.
well, oh yeah, even though it doesn't have if it doesn't have a CC bar, it should turn into a MOA. But I guess it's considered always defiant. It just doesn't doesn't have a break bar. I mean, if your group's failing to CCs, I would go ahead and drop it.
Okay.
I think someone told me it was like it's like a 700 DPS loss. The bigger thing for me for this, though, it's because it generates 2 blades for you.
Ah, okay.
Like I usually, this matters more to me for blade generation, so I can get through my F skills faster.
Okay.
Mass and Viz is useful for a couple of encounters, and then Time Warp you need like opening quickness. But generally, the only thing you're going to drop this for is MOA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then your F skills. So you got F1. So we talked about this before: bleeding and tormenting, and then it does strike damage. You get 2 charges of that with the trait, and then Bladesong Sorrow. It adds confusion to the mix and does slightly less power damage. F3 is 1 hit that CCs. Distortion. This did get nerfed to 3/4 of a second. I still think that's too much for this. It should probably be like half a second per blade.
Yeah.
But if you guys this used to be 1 second per blade, so you got 5 seconds
nuts.
of distortion, which you can reset
With the signet of illusions, right?
Yeah.
That's
so you had
insane.
this. You had 5 seconds of distortion. Then you had a 2.5 second block with a half second evade with sword 4. And then you got signet illusions, which you could get another 5 seconds of distortion with. So it was actually pretty insane, like how much you could do. Also keep in mind back then too, Blade Turn Requiem was a 2-second block as well.
Yeah, I remember that used to also be something you could use for a get out of dodge sort of situation.
Yeah, so Blade Turn Requiem now, it used to do a 2-second block no matter how many blades you had, and then the number of hits it did scale with the number of blades it has. Now it just does the hits and scales off the number of blades you do. But they took off the cast time. It used to have like a half-second cast time or something like
so
that.
it's an instant cast now?
Yeah, so you can cast this while casting other things, which is why it's used in the opener instead of like your F1.
Okay. Yeah, as far as the rotation goes, are you basically using all of your, with the exception of like, I would imagine F3 and distortion, are you pretty much using the rest of your F skills off cooldown?
There are 3 pretty much basic tenets for the rotation on Virtua. This is why it's such an easy build to learn. Outside the opener, like your normal gameplay loop, you're doing 2 phantasms per weapon swap, and then you're using your 2 and 3 skill off cooldown, and you're using F1 and F2 whenever you have 5 blades. That's it.
Nice.
So your opener, swordsman, weapon swap, warden, signet, warden, do whatever, weapon swap back, swordsman, use swordsman again, like you wait for the second swordsman to come up, and then you weapon swap.
Okay, so you wouldn't use illusions while you're on swordsman. You use it while you're on warden.
You primarily do it on warden, though there are some cases where it's like your weapon swap is up. You're basically going to weapon swap as often as possible, except you're always going to do a second swordsman.
And you always do two warden and 2 swordsmen basically per.
It's always
weapon.
2 swordsmen. Like if you want the easy, like an easy way to learn this, yeah, it's 2 swordsmen, 2 wardens every single time. Okay. But there's gonna be some parts in the rotation where like your signet is still like 6 or 7 seconds off cooldown, and your weapon's not available, and you should just swap. And you only get 1 warden. There's some cases too where it's like signet's about to come off cooldown, but you want a weapon swap, so you could do swordsman, signet, swordsman, and then you do a 3rd swordsman. But typically speaking, you're going to be doing 2 swordsmans and 2 wardens per weapon swap. The important thing though is when you're on sword, you start with swordsman, and before you leave sword, you end with swordsman. and then you
Okay.
fill in with 2 and 3 otherwise. And then your F1 and F2, you're just going to use those whenever you have 5 blades. And you can use Signet of Illusion to reset those for like maximum effect. So like you don't want to use this when like F2 is about to come off cooldown. You don't want to use it when you already have a charge in F1. So get 5 blades, use those skills to use up the charges, and then use Signet of Illusions. And also keep in with F5 instant cast, so use that when you have 5 also. But you could probably prioritize using that more when like while you're casting a swordsman, while you're casting a warden, since that one can be cast while you're casting other things.
Yeah, what are like the longest? Well, I guess it looks like 2 and 3 are instant casts, right? At least they don't have a
They
cast time on the
don't show a
tooltip.
cast time, but they do have a cast.
Okay.
So
but the
you
longest
can basically
casts are your phantasms.
yeah,
Okay.
and your Signet of Ether.
Oh, okay. So ideally, while you're doing one of your phantasms or the ether, signet of the ether, which goes along with those, that's when you're going to do your instant cast skills, which are your elite and blade turn requiem, right?
Yeah. So if you watch the benchmark video, like the rotation they have set up on there is basically, why is my UI so small? They changed this? I don't know. But the way they have it set up is basically you're going to get all your skills off cooldown, and then you follow that. So that's how actually pretty much all the openers are set up.
Yeah.
Is that you are trying to get all your skills off cooldown in a way that you can get them all off cooldown as fast as possible, followed by then getting your rotations together to where you can keep them off cooldown. So at this one, also the timer on the golem benchmark and on the logs don't start until you actually get in combat. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things you can do, like swordsman. If you look at this, when you cast a swordsman, so it spawned over here,
Yeah.
and then it did the leap. It didn't get me in combat until it actually hit it. So there's actually some fights where let me share my screen.
Okay.
Actually, no. Let me talk about this later. So, but yeah, I can share my screen so
Okay.
we can go over the rotation. Because this is more of an opener thing that you can do where you can cheese things a little bit.
Ooh, the etherbound swords look good with Virtuoso. I hadn't thought about that before.
They'll have to hit much harder.
Okay, I don't know if you want to show my screen on your stream or just
Yeah, I have it showing.
you.
I just swapped it. Yeah.
Yeah, so for the opener on this one, it's just swords. It's sword 5, weapon swap. Oh, let me
Oh, yeah, pistol on.
focus. Yeah, swordsman, swap, warden, and then you can do your F1, F2 stuff in here, Signet of Ether, warden, and then you do other things. When you're using your 2 and 3 skill, prioritize your 3, then the 2.
Okay.
But yeah, for this one, so you can delay your elite a little bit so that that you're using it for blade generation.
Okay.
Oh, my elite setup. Alright, so here I wouldn't use Signet Illusions because my skills are about to come off cooldown. But here they're all used now, so I can use this here to reset this, and now I can cast this again. Now, ideally, you're never hitting it where it says 2 stacks. Ideally, you're basically going to be going through these things so that as soon as you get 5 blades, you're using a blade slong.
Okay.
Waiting for F2 just because F1 isn't. It's always recharging.
Oh,
You just
yeah.
don't
So it like does up to 2 stacks of it.
Yeah, you basically just never want them to get to max to be available, and they're not cooling off. Like they're always recharging. And then throw in the F5 in there when you can. This is not optimal at all right now, but ideally these are all off cooldown, and you are using them as soon as you get 5 blades.
Okay.
Yeah, my controls are messed up right now. But yeah, so let me actually fix that.
You looking for like the import thing?
There it is. Instant.
Oh, ground targeting.
Yeah, so 1,000 cuts is actually a ground targeted skill. So if we put this to this, like if you do 1,000 cuts, you'll get this line here like this.
Yeah.
So you can actually aim it sideways and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Your sword 3 is a ground targeted skill. They should actually have the virtuoso symbol there instead of the mirage symbol, but
Or I guess
yeah.
that's
So
like the general.
I generally
Mesmer
forget
one.
that because I usually have this on instant when I'm playing Mesmer or I'm playing Virt. Let me see if I can remember the optimal one here.
I could outrun us. Sharper still. You're finished.
I screwed up one of the attacks there.
How dare you?
But yeah, so on this one, your basic loop here, end with swordsman. You got your focus. Reset your warden when you can. Use your dagger or use your blades whenever you get 5. Start with a swordsman. Cast your other skills. So when you're on swordsman, your weapon swap does come up ahead of your swordsman reset.
Okay.
Always just wait for it though.
Just barely though.
Yeah, so your weapon swap's 8 seconds. Your swordsman is about 9 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is 12 seconds, but then you have alacrity. So it ends up being about, it's actually like 9.25 seconds or something like that. Yeah, so if we want to ignore all your other skills, oh, that's why my auto attack was turned off. Your basic attack loop in here is just this. So ignore all your other skills. This is the stuff you should always be doing. So swordsman, warden, signet, warden.
Warden stuff.
So you switch back, you start with sword. So you end with sword and then swap. Okay, and then other than that, now you're just filling it in. So you have 5 blades, use a blade song. 2 and 3 come up, use it.
That's a good sort of piecemeal way to learn the rotation there. Just kind of getting used to doing the phantasms first. And then as you get really comfy with that and your signet of the ether, you could even just throw in just doing 3 and 2 to start. And then you could try doing that and ignoring 2 and 3 and just working on the blades and kind of keep adding things in without having to do all of it at once.
Yeah, the important thing though is you're always use your swordsmans or your phantasms, you're always swapping. After that, just fill in your F1, F2, and F5. And then use your F3, F4 situationally. Use Signet Illusions, as I said, to get maximum effect on your F1 and F2. And your F5 if you can. But your F1 and F2 are way more damage. So this one, if we use this skill... Oh, you already added condies on this thing.
They'll have to hit.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I added a lot more.
I think you have to like
I think we
clear
have
the
to reset it.
golem. Yeah, and then do a brand new.
Yeah, so if you looked at how many of these things each did, so your F1,
Yeah, look at that count.
7 stacks of bleeding, or 6 stacks of bleeding, 5 stacks of torment. I guess they did change it, so it doesn't do 2 stacks. Oh yeah, they did change that.
Okay.
Okay, but like your F5 here, each time it strikes, it'll do torment and it'll do a stack of bleed per blade that's used. If I don't use other skills, then this is the only way I'm getting clones back. But yeah, you look at this one. So every time it procs a hit, it'll do 1 stack of torment, 1 stack of bleed on here. Keep in mind though, this one is 240 radius. Like
Not happening.
So it's like
you
smallish.
kind of, yeah, you kind of got to be in pretty much in melee range of
Be in the
this.
hitbox, yeah.
Yeah. So what I was talking about for some of the weird things you could do with the opener on this. So you can weapon swap with no cooldown, basically, if you're not in combat, right? So I'm going to drop this just so I can get So if you cast Swordsman at a little bit farther out, you can cast this and weapon swap, and you won't get into combat. So you can do this, and you can really swap back. So instead of having to wait the 8 seconds for it, you can get an extra Swordsman out faster. So this does throw it off a little bit compared to like if you're trying to go for the optimal setup, it does throw off your blade generation a little bit from your weapon swaps because you're going to be generating blades at the very, very beginning a heck of a lot faster than normal because you'll have 4 phantasms active. Okay, but yeah, you can do that on a lot of fights. Any fight that you're starting at range, like I tend to like to do that on like Sabir and stuff like that. The other thing you could do for an opener is so when you get into combat in raids, even if you have no blades, it restocks it to 5 blades. So when the boon strip happens, you get 5 blades back automatically.
Kind of like
right,
for
so
like CA and Shroud and stuff for for other
yeah.
classes.
So they did this so that people could always have 5 blades to start the fight. But what that also does is that you can start a fight with F1. Like if you do F1, like when you're not in combat, these will hit. You'll get in the fight, and then you'll get 5 blades back, like right away.
Oh, that's nice.
So now on some fights, you can do both. You can do the swordsman, and you can get the 5 blades back. So you do the swordsman, weapon swap. Actually, if you do that, like what I would do is swordsman, and then do this one right away, and then you'll swap. We'll swap if you get in combat. So you'll have this one going off before you get in, and then you'll weapon swap not in combat. The combat will start. You'll get 5 blades back right away, and then you just continue as normal.
Nice.
So you can do a little bit of precasting with this, but those are like the only precasting things I found on Virtuoso so far.
Okay.
Is doing swordsman and then weapon swapping before you get into combat, and then using a blade song before you get into combat, so you get 5 blades back right away.
Now, as far
But yeah,
as,
Virtuoso, very easy. Oh, I know why I wasn't critting all the time. I don't have the food on.
Oh yeah. And Power Virtuoso right now is one of the less strong builds. I don't remember exactly why though at the moment.
Power Virt's not bad. It's just that Power Chrono is better.
Yes, there we go. That's what it is.
So if you're going to play a Power Mesmer of some kind, why would you play Virtuoso when Chrono is higher damage, has better utility, is, in my opinion, tankier? Like they actually run off the same build things. Virtuoso and Power Chronomancer have pretty similar rotations. It's just that Virtuoso doesn't have C-split.
Which that actually might be a good segue to move into Chrono if you're ready for
Yeah,
it.
like Connie Verta said, it's pretty easy. 2 swords or 2 phantasms per weapon swap, 2 and 3 off cooldown when you can, F1, F2, F5 when you have 5 blades. That's it. You do that. The benchmark on this is what, 42k DPS right now. If you get 2 swordsmans out, you're using your 2 and 3 off cooldown, you're using your F1 and F2 whenever you have 5 blades. That alone, let's see, Condi Vert is at 42.5. Just doing all that right there, like not even trying to get like optimal stuff, you're going to get like 30 to 39k like pretty easily. Like I think this build auto attacking does like 32.
Wait, if the auto attacks are 32 and I can't bench above 32 on Conti Vert, what the frick am I doing wrong?
Your gear is probably not correct.
I have crit cap.
Like you have 100% crit chance, 100% bleed duration.
You'll have to hit much
Yeah.
harder.
Are you running bursting in earth?
Yeah.
Because I know this thing does like 30k. It was like 30 or 30. I don't remember 32k, but it was at one point. But it's like 30k just auto attacking. or just using like 1, 2, and 3, because like chaos without doing anything else does like 32k with just hitting like 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, if you are only getting, if you're getting under 32k and you're trying to do everything, you might be missing vulnerability on the golem. I don't know. I'd have to look at your log to see what's going on with that.
I could outrun
Which,
a centaur.
not to like totally volunteer you for it, Enko, but usually you're pretty up for like helping people out with rotations and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and looking at logs.
Just let me know.
All I know is both dueling and chaos. 32, 33k is my cap. I can't push for
Use
it.
the console to begin combat testing.
Okay.
Inquiries.
The goal I usually tell people to aim for the benchmarks is like I don't go for benchmarks ever. Like I don't try to match it. I usually go for 90% of the benchmark. So 90% of the benchmark on Virt is 38k. So that's usually what I tell people is like aim for 90% when you're trying to learn a build. If you're not getting 90% and like all your gear, like you have all infusions, you're running all the right gear. If you're not getting 90%, it's usually one of two things. There's usually something with the traits that you don't understand. Like there's a misunderstanding of how some of the traits work, and so you're not maintaining certain buffs and stuff like that. Or is this a matter of speed with how fast you're handling your skills?
I was gonna say that right there, in particular, that this speed thing, because you would think that like there's been times, say like when I've been practicing,
They'll have to hit much harder.
like ranger rotations are usually what I put more time into. So I'll be practicing it, and I just won't be getting, on a typical rotation when I grab it and put it on the bench, I may be doing. I start off at 70 to 75% of it, going, kind of slow. And then once I get to 80, I'm like, okay, I feel pretty happy with myself, like without infusions and stuff like that. But as I've gotten more and more used to like churning out, say, like the Soul Beast rotation that I've worked on, or Untamed, the speed, it doesn't seem like it's that much of a difference, but it really is actually can be quite a big difference in the amount of damage you end up outputting. So that being said, like if you're not someone who can hit keys like super fast, or it doesn't come as naturally, or your first, like you don't have the rotation down like in your eyes closed in your sleep sort of situation, it's okay if the bench that you're hitting is closer to something like 80%. That's usually what I kind of advise for people, is to try to go to 80. 90 I think is good to shoot for, but I know like I would say I'm close to an average-ish player, or maybe slightly above average, and I'm not hitting 90%. So it's a good thing to try to have a goal for, but don't beat yourself up about it if you're not hitting 90.
Yeah, like 85%. Like 90% is like that's usually my goal. I know some people aim for like 85%. But I think most people I've run into, once I've sat down with them, 90% is usually pretty obtainable. Like going over the benchmark, that's when you have to like start getting a lot of the like the little timings down of like making sure you're chaining your skills correctly. Sometimes canceling aftercast and stuff like that, which is really annoying. There is some aftercast canceling you can do on Virt to get a little bit extra damage out, but my personal opinion is it doesn't really matter unless like you're going for a record.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chronomancer.
Chronomancer. What's really, really nice about Chronomancer is you can play DPS, quickness, or alacrity all with the same build. So one change they did make, they changed this to a Thief Relic instead of Fireworks Relic now. I run a slightly different setup than what's on the Snowcrow site. If you look at what's on the Snowcrow site for their build, theirs is slightly more optimal. Mine's more so I don't have to deal with food swapping. Because their setup, they are running the power precision food. So I opted to just run an extra assassin's piece, so I could just run the normal, like the power ferocity food. So I'm trading 70 power for 70 ferocity on my setup. But as I said, I find this one because this is what you'll usually see people drop in raids and stuff like that, and then I don't have to like run my own food. Yeah, so because of that, what I have set up on here is slightly different on this one. In that, what did I change? Berserker, Assassin, Berserker. I'm running precision infusions in here somewhere. Yeah, I have a couple of precision fusions, but I basically just set it up so I'm still reaching 70% crit chance just with power ferocity food instead. So I made up the 70 ferocity by adding another assassin's piece here somewhere, and then infusions to make up the difference.
Oh lord,
But
my build is, I don't even know what my build is on this one.
if you just follow the Snowcross one, this
Yeah.
this is an optimal setup. But the damage difference on it is going to be like a few hundred DPS. So I opted for something that was a little more just easier, or not easier to run, but more convenient to run in raids.
Okay.
But whatever setup you do go with, your gear setup for power DPS, alacrity DPS, and quickness DPS are all the same. So you don't have no gear changes to do.
That's
Your
nice.
traits, the only thing that changes on your trait is your Grandmaster and Chronomancer. So you run Chrono Phantasma if you're DPS, you run Seize the Moment if you're quickness, and you run Stretch Time if you're alacrity. And that's it. That's the only difference.
That's so nice not having
For
to do
your
templates.
skills, I know at Snowcrows they drop Disenchanter and they run Action. This is so you can also generate Might and Fury for your sub squad.
Okay.
If Might and Fury is already covered in your group, though, you could just play this like you do Power with the Disenchanter. I usually just keep a Disenchanter, but yeah, just you can drop to Wall of Action if you need Might or Fury for your group. This isn't a lot of Might or Fury though, which is why I usually don't bring it. So yeah, it does eight stacks of Might and it does 6 seconds of Fury.
Okay, so it's not
So you
really
do not
needed
cap out with it.
unless
Yeah, you do not cap
extra
out with this. You
boons.
just help out.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do the same. We'll go over the traits. So this one does run Greatsword. I was looking at the video and they were actually saying that the damage difference between the focus build isn't that much different. So, and I actually find the focus version a lot easier to run. But I would actually have to see how that damage compares to nowadays. So we'll start with the Greatsword one because that's the one that most people will see. So Bountiful Blades, when you use Greatsword 4, you'll get 2 Berserkers instead. They do less damage, but because there's two Phantasms, that does mean you get 2 clones back for it. Right? So, keep in mind with Chronomancer, you do get you're back on clones now with the blades, and then you gain Continuous Split. Continuous Split, when you cast it, it basically remembers where your location was, it remembers your health, it remembers all your skill recharges. So when you go into C-Split, it'll remember your setup, and when this ends, it'll reset all your stuff back. So if you had all your stuff available, go into C-Split, cast all your stuff inside C-Split. When C-Split ends, it'll reset all your stuff. Yeah, power build. So basically everything you're doing on here is basically just buffing your damage. So Vicious Expressions, though, keep in mind that this gets a damage modifier when your target has no boons. Okay, and then if it does have boons, when you do a CC, when you do a hard CC, it'll strip off 2. So things like Gravity Well, it does 3. It does 3 CCs. It does a float, a sink, and a pull. So that will actually strip off 6 stacks or 6 boons. Things like your F3. So on Virtuoso, where we mentioned that this is a single CC on Virtuoso that just scales up with how many blades you have. This one, it will do a 100 CC per clone. So how the clones work on Chronomancer, and also actually on Core Mesmer also. Like if you activate your F1, each of your clones will run at your target, and then they'll kind of detonate on them.
Oh my god, I hate it in PvP. I hate it so much.
Yeah, so it's a chain of attacks, right? So if your target has Aegis, for example, the Aegis will block one clone, and then two of them will come in afterwards, right? So time sync, if you have 3 clones and you cast it, this will actually do 3 CCs of 100, which means it'll strip off 6 stacks because each one will do 2 boon strips. So this is particularly useful for like Kadim 2, for example. Like he gets 5 boons, an F3 will strip off all 5 of them if you have 3 clones. And that's due to Vicious Expression. Okay, Chronomancer does not do well on Kadim 1 because he always has a boon that is constantly pulsing. So you're basically losing a 50% damage modifier. Which, yeah, damage on Chronomancer kind of sucks on Kadim. The problem is, though, usually you want to bring a portal, so you kind of do want to bring a Chronomancer. So it kind of sucks. Like, I probably want to bring this as DPS, but maybe as quickness or alacrity, since you're already going to have lower damage anyways. So you can increase your squad's damage by bringing a portal. Yeah, everything else on here are basically damage modifiers. Flow at times kind of nice because you get you kind of maintain some alacrity in yourself per clone. I don't remember if they changed this back that you count as a clone. So if you have 3 clones and you shatter, you actually are doing 4 clones worth of stuff. Don't remember if that actually got changed. Let's take a look. I need to generate clones here for a second. Okay, so we should see 4 stacks confusion on this. Yeah, 4 stacks. So yeah, you still count as a clone. So if you have 8 boons on something, you can strip off 8 with this as long as you're in melee range too. So when you use this next to it, you'll also do a CC. Okay, so that does mean if you can use your F skills on Chronomancer without any blade, without any clones. Unlike Virtuoso, you have to have a blade to use it. Chronomancer, because you count as a clone yourself, you can activate it, but it'll just count as 1. So when you have time catches up, or rather a flow of time, like if you activate this with 3 clones, you'll do 4 seconds of alacrity on yourself because you count as 1 yourself. Okay, improved alacrity. Any alacrity that's applied to you, it lasts a shorter time, but it also is more effective. So alacrity is normally what is that, a 25%, right? Yeah, it's 25% skill recharge rate normally. If you have this, it's a 50% recharge, skill recharge rate instead. And if you have alacrity, you also get crit strike damage. So that's also nice. But if you get 10 seconds of alacrity applied to you, you only get 6.6 seconds of it instead. So if you're on the golem, and you apply alacrity to yourself, actually, Zoa, can you click on me so you can see my boons on your screen?
Yes, let me swap to me. There we go. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you notice my alacrity keeps dropping off. Like it's the first one on the left. It keeps dropping off, and then it gets reapplied on the golem. So the golem applies 10 seconds of each boon every 10 seconds. But because you have improved alacrity, you only get 6.6 seconds of alacrity. So when you're on the golem and you're benching Chronomancer, you got to go and you got to add the boons twice.
That's so weird.
So now you'll get 20 seconds of every boon every 10 seconds instead. Okay, so something to keep in mind, because it's also going to... Because I remember having issues with that when I was first benching. I'm like, why does my alacrity keep dropping? It's like, oh, because the way they set up the boons from the console is kind of jacked up. Okay, you can switch back to the my screen for the skills.net thing.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to talk about all 3 of the Grandmasters right now before we go into anything else, because again, I pretty much play quickness, alacrity, and DPS the same way. You could get a little more optimal with it, but unless you're really trying to push numbers, the difference that you're going to have on each one is not that much compared to just learning one rotation or one concept rather. Okay, so Chrono Phantasma, this is the trait that you run on DPS. So the difference for this one, what this does is that you'll summon a swordsman, right? It'll do its attack. Normally, it'll do its attack, and then it'll finish it. It'll despawn, and then you'll spawn a clone. What Chrono Phantasma does instead of summoning a clone, it'll summon itself again. It'll wait a quarter of a second, and then it'll do its attack again. Okay, so every swordsman you'll get two swordsman attacks out of it. So instead of the 9 strikes you're normally getting, you're going to get 18 strikes instead. Okay, then instead of the berserker 4 hits you're going to get, which you're actually already getting 2 berserkers, then you're going to get an additional 2 berserkers whenever you cast it. So, and then once they do it the second time, then they'll despawn and turn into clones. So when you're running Chrono Phantasma, you're going to get more damage, and your clones, you'll get your clones out a little slower than you would if you weren't running this. So I know on the tooltip it says boons removed, Defiance Break. That's a tooltip issue on here because the days that this is mentioning, it applies it to the spawn phantasm. So you'll spawn a swordsman. The swordsman that spawns a second time will be dazed for a quarter of a second, and then it will do its attack. They basically just did that so it wasn't just a continuous attack, like 2 continuous attacks in a row. So spawn, despawn, spawn again, dazed, and then it'll attack. I think it was Narson that thought this also like did a CC because the tooltip said that, but that's not what the case is. It just means that the phantasms themselves, they will they're going to be CC'd. Yeah, actually, something I want to check because no, never mind. That's not how that works. Yeah, on the tooltip, they should not have put the boons removed, Defiance Break, and the days on here. Like, I think that just confused people. Okay, so seize the moment for this one. Every time you shatter, you will provide 1 second of quickness. Okay, so keep in mind, you count as a clone too. So if you have 3 clones up, you're doing 4 seconds of quickness. And this is with 0% boon duration. Okay, every time you summon a phantasm, you will apply 3 seconds of quickness as well. So summoning a berserker, because you have Bountiful Blades, this will summon 2 phantasms. You should get 6 seconds of quickness whenever you use Greatsword 4. Okay, so because you're spawning clones and you're shattering so often on Chronomancer, this is why you can get away with having 0% boon duration and still being able to maintain boons. Okay, so that's what Seize the Moment does. Now, stretch time. Whenever you summon a phantasm, you give out 3 seconds of alacrity, and Flow of Time, which is your master minor trait, will also now apply to allies. I actually think this is the stupidest way of rewording this because they could have just exactly how it says receives the moment. This is all stretch time does. They do the exact same thing, just one's quickness, one alacrity. But because you already have an alacrity trait here, they're like, oh, we'll just make Flow of Time AoE also instead. But the way it's worded is just dumb. It's just that whenever you shatter or summon a phantasm, you will give alacrity. Whenever you shatter, summon a phantasm, you'll give quickness. For your skills, you do run a dagger main hand. If you want to go a little more defensive, you can run a sword. I think I remember people were saying that dagger and sword actually do about the same amount of damage.
Okay.
It's just that dagger is ranged and it pierces. So because greatsword is a 1200 range, all of its skills in here are 1200 range except for the illusionary wave. Having the dagger here makes Chronomancer makes it a fully ranged class. If you run a sword instead, that does mean like you kind of need to be in melee range, right? Because your sword is a melee weapon on this. So 130 range for these. The big difference on this though is that if you need more boon strips, for example, your auto attack on sword will boon strip. Your third auto attack will strip a boon.
That's real nice.
Yeah, and if it doesn't have a boon, then it does a ton of damage. So, what's also nice about Dagger does not have an auto chain, while Sword does. If you're running a Sword main hand, if you don't finish your auto chain, you lose a ton of damage. Because if you look at this, 917 on your first attack, 917 your second, and then 1800 on your third attack without boons, right? So I see a lot of people when they are interrupting their chain, they're not getting a mind spike. What then ends up happening is instead of doing 3600 damage per auto chain, you end up only doing 1900 or 908, and then another 900.
Okay.
So you end up missing out a lot of damage if you don't do that. What was that?
So it's important to finish your auto chain, just like on
if you're running a
Scrapper
sword.
and, Scourge.
Well, Scourge is even more important because the way the scepter works, it does a bleed, then a poison, and then the third attack does a poison and a bleed. So if you interrupt that, like, it's actually more important on Scourge to finish your scepter auto attack chain than it is to use like your other skills.
Wow.
In most cases, like if you finish the second attack, definitely finish the third. Yeah, so Blurred Frenzy, and this is why I'm saying you could also be a little more defensive. It does 8 strikes, but you also do you also get a blur effect where you're evading for a full second. So you're basically doing an extra evade, and then you have a leap here with Sword 3. So Illusionary Leap, the way it works, you spawn a clone, it jumps at your target, it cripples them, and then this one you swap places with your clone. So if you put a clone down and then you run away and then you use this, you'll teleport to your target, and the clone will end up being where you were. So you can use this on like Sabir. You could jump over the shockwave with it.
Oh, that's fun.
Well, honestly, if you're playing a Mesmer on Severe,
You
just use
distort
Distortion on it.
Yeah.
But if you want to be fancy, you can use this to skip past the Shockwave too.
God, I'm so tired of using Distortion. I'll just use Sword instead.
But it does mean you have to back out so that when you swap places with it, then like the wave's already past where your clone is. Yeah, so Dagger is just a lot more. It's easier to use and it's also range. So, but you do get more boon strips, and you have the blur with sword main hand. Sword 4, and we kind of already talked about, but Sword 4, like, this does a ton of damage because keep in mind this is a full power build now. So blocking an attack is extra damage if you can squeeze it in. It's also an extra clone. When you do block an attack, you do get a clone with it too. Swordsman, same deal we talked about. Disenchanter hits really hard without boons, and with boons it does less than half the damage, but it also will strip 5 boons. This can also can bounce. So the bouncing in this game is kind of weird. It's supposed to prioritize enemies, but it's still kind of messed up that sometimes it won't. But ideally it'll hit the enemy, bounce once, hit an ally, bounce once, hit the enemy again. That's bounce 3, and then it'll come back. So it should ideally be able to hit the enemy 3 times and strip off 15 boons, but or it'll hit 3 times for a lot of damage. But it doesn't always work out like that, so it's kind of inconsistent with it. But just note this does a lot of damage and it's a boon strip. In raids, I don't really think you're ever dealing with anything with more than 5 boons, except for maybe Doom when you steal stuff.
Yeah.
Though, if someone got their boons stripped on Doom, you can use this, but you also lose damage if you're using to strip boons. If you're trying to strip boons off of something, I would just get 3 clones and use F3, or use your F4 double tap sword 4. You could summon a berserker because each one will strip off 2 boons, or you can use Greatsword 5, which will also strip off 2 boons. So your berserkers do not lose damage if they strip boons, while your disenchanter does. So if you're actually aiming for damage, do not use this for boon strips. You got Well of Calamity, just an extra damage field. It's a well. You can, if you need to drop something, I think Metro Pain's actually the first thing you need to drop. Like if you need Blink or need to bring feedback or something like that. And then you got Gravity Well. Gravity Well, CC, some extra damage. So I said it does 3 pulses where it will do a pull, it'll do a float, and then it'll do the knockdown. So This can actually, it'll strip off 2 boons per because it's doing a separate CC each time, and the total CC on this is 350.
I'm surprised it's not more than that, actually.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying because like MOA is 600, same cooldown. MOA used to have like 180 second cooldown or something like that. It used to be
Feel
ridiculously
like
long.
that's a little more appropriate.
Like Time Warp, since they nerfed it to 5 targets, they should change this back to 60 seconds. Or they should change this to 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Because it only does like 5 seconds of quickness now instead of 10. And it only affects 5. Change this back to 60.
Yeah, I think that would make sense.
But yeah, MOA used to be way longer. And so Gradual was more CC per like on average, but MOA was bigger CC if you didn't need it as often. But now they're both 60 seconds. So you're basically trading CC for damage with Gravity Well. All right, you got Great Sword, you got your auto attack. Something also to note with this one, if you have your auto attack turned off on Great Sword, it'll finish that 1 second cast time before letting you do anything else. So make sure you guys have this turned on.
Okay.
For that matter, same thing with Dagger. Like, there's very few times I think you should try your auto attack turned off. Because if you have your auto attack turned off, so the big difference with it, if you have your auto attack turned off, if you try casting another skill, it will queue after your current action. If you have your auto attack turned on, it'll cancel your auto attack and it'll just do whatever you try to cast. So this is more noticeable for the channeled auto attacks like Greatsword 1, Staff 1 on Druid. If you have it turned off and you try doing something else, you'll have like a 1 second delay before it actually goes off. Greatsword 2, bouncing attack. It'll spawn 1 clone. This is actually why the benchmark's higher when you're without allies, because the bouncing is kind of bugged, and it's supposed to prioritize enemies, but it'll bounce to allies as well, more than it should. Greatsword 3, just a cripple now. This used to strip boons. They moved the boon strip from Mind Stab to Berserker, which I don't like. I thought it was cooler on Mind Stab.
Yeah, I think that makes more sense narratively, like a Mind Stab, you know.
Yeah, so also Mind Stab, this will interrupt other skills. So the way the prioritization for skills go, originally it was healing skills followed by defensive skills, followed by CC skills, followed by everything else. Over the past 11 years, that's been kind of mucked up. So Mind Stab used to be considered a defensive skill because it stripped boons, I think. But they got rid of that, but it still has the same priority. So this will interrupt skills. So if you cast 2 and then hit 3 right away, it will interrupt your 2. If you cast your Berserker and then you try cast 3 right away, it'll interrupt your Berserker. So you have to be careful if you're casting this after your 2 or 4 that you make sure you finish these casts first before you actually hit your 3 skill. So likewise, like if you cast Berserker and then you cast Sign of Ether too early, you'll interrupt the Berserker.
Okay, because heal skills have priority.
Yeah.
That's good to know. I knew that CC skills had priority. This is good to know because I consistently tend to interrupt things like Frost Trap and Hammer 4 and Axe 4 on my Ranger. So now I'm hopefully understanding what's interrupting them.
That standard rule for prioritizations, like it's been like they've mucked it up so much since the game came out that standard rule doesn't really apply all the time now, because like some skills changed. But even on like brand new skills that they've added to the game, like some of them don't have the right prioritizations assigned to them. So that's like a very general rule, but you really do need to go onto it. Like when you're learning a class, like go on and try all the skills and see which ones will interrupt each other. So that way you just know, to be aware of that in the future. Mm-hmm. But on Mesmer, or at least on Chronomancer for this setup, I think that standard rule applies to everything except for Greatsword 3. Greatsword 3 is the outlier on that one, just because it's kind of messed up. And I think Greatsword 5 like won't interrupt other things too, which is weird. Like Greatsword 5 will queue for some reason.
Yeah,
Well,
which is weird,
it
since
actually it
it's a
cues with
CC.
some skills, but not with other skills. That's why like you really do just need to like test it nowadays.
Okay.
But in general, that's how it's supposed to work. But yeah, Greatsword 3 is kind of messed up, where this one will interrupt 2 and 4.
So I'm
So
guessing that the combo that you do with Signet of the Ether on this one is with the Greatsword Phantasm. Because
so
that one has
that's
more damage.
yeah. So when I was saying that like I just run the same rotation on both DPS and boon support. Um, you get more boons if you use it with the Berserker because it's 2 clones. Because you do 2 Berserkers, then a Signet, then 2 more Berserkers. So you get 4 clones total. So that will give you better boon uptime because you can shatter more often. Versus if you use it on the sword, you'll get 1 clone and then you'll get a second clone. So you'll get half the clones basically using the swordsman. And the rotation used to be you did use on the Berserker, but I looked at Snowcrows today before this, and for the DPS rotation, they're using it on the swordsman now.
Interesting. I wonder why.
So let's see.
Because it seems
This
like it
is
does the
going to
most
be 4,045. It's like 4,700 damage per swordsman versus. Yeah, I mean, I've always liked using on the swordsman better because I started playing Chronomancer when it was the focus sword build, and you always use it on the swordsman because swordsman did more than the warden. But yeah, the current rotation that they have on here, they are doing it on the. They're doing it on the swordsman. So we can start talking about the rotations here. So the big thing, well, outside the opener, and the opener they still use it on the Berserker.
Interesting. Okay.
C split is the main thing that you need to learn how to use. Like the rest of the rotation is fairly simple, but the rotation that your opener or whenever you C split, that's where it gets a little bit weird. That's what always throws people off.
Because that's when
So-
your burst is within, essentially within C split, and then like what immediately after technically.
Well, you basically get you get a double up on all your skills. So whenever you see C split, you'll burst a lot harder because you're being able to catch. See, like right here, they do swordsman twice. You'll be able to get everything off twice. But if you're too slow to get everything, that's where you start losing on a lot of things, and you actually have to really practice to make sure you can squeeze everything inside the C split. The greatsword rotation on it, it's
No, I'm
as I said, I like the focus one better, but this version with the Signet of Ether on the swordsman actually flows a lot better than the old greatsword one. But if you're playing the boon build, they do still use Signet of Ether on the greatsword to get those
Okay.
extra clones out. Though
Yeah, I'd
honestly,
probably
you
just
still
do that
generate
way.
so many clones with this build, it shouldn't really be a problem anyways. But
Okay.
that's something you just have to try out. See if you can still maintain boons without it. But yeah, C split is where you just have to make sure that like you have to be aware of how many clones you need to get all your skills off. And like it used to be a standard for like a 2 clone C split, and because it would end like when you wanted it to end, like after you get going through all your skills. So if you used it with 3 clones, you had to end it a little bit early. Like you had to manually end it. So C split, like you count as a clone, so it's 1.5 seconds per clone. So you have 3 clones and yourself. It's a 6-second C split. So that's actually a lot of time to use all your skills. But if you want to get out early, you can hit F5 again to end it early. Your continuous split can also get killed. So
How does that happen?
the enemies can't hit it. So if they
Oh,
do enough
right, 'cause
damage
it does
to it,
leave a little
they
doodad
can
behind.
they can actually kill your C split, and you'll revert early. It doesn't really happen that often. It used to happen more often for some reason, but nowadays, like, it's been a while since I've actually had my C split get killed.
Yeah, it's interesting because yeah, it just shows as a. I guess that is technically a yellow. It leaves behind a little yellow icon, so that would turn into.
And I don't know, maybe
Damage
it's also they changed this. What you probably wouldn't even do is go into PvP and see if you could kill it.
Yeah. Naomi was thinking that the reason why they're doing it on sword might be to upkeep Fencer's finesse time.
Nah, that shouldn't really matter. Oh, I guess another thing to mention too with clones. When a clone spawns, it'll have whatever main hand weapon you had when it spawned. So if I cast, oh, you can go back to, go back in game. You don't have to go to my screen.
Agony, torment, pain.
So if I cast a Greatsword 2 on this, it'll spawn a clone using the Greatsword.
Yeah.
Okay. If I cast Dagger 2 and I cast this, it'll spawn a clone using daggers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but one thing that you can do, it's whatever weapon you're on when the clone spawns, right? So if I cast a swordsman and then I weapon swap, when this clone spawns and I'm on a Greatsword now, a Greatsword clone will spawn instead.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, see, it's a Greatsword clone now. So it's going to be whatever weapon you're on when the clone spawns. So if I do a Greatsword 2 and then weapon swap before it hits, it'll spawn a dagger clone now. So one thing with Fencer's Finesse, like when you were running a sword main hand before, like your clones would also maintain this. But yeah, having 2 swordsmen out, like that could be why they're doing that, because keep in mind, because you're getting Chrono Phantasma, you're going to have this, you're going to keep getting stacks of this up until the respawn of the second swordsman you put out. But I don't know. For me, it flows better to use on the sword. I actually never liked using it on the greatsword. But yeah, that is something to keep in mind with clones, though. So that's honestly when you're running dagger greatsword, that's not a huge deal because your auto attacks really don't have special effects. But if you're running a sword main hand, your sword clones will, because they do your they do your one skill, they will strip off boons too when they do, because they're going to do the full auto attack chain. So if you're running a sword main hand on something with boons, your clones can also strip off boons too. Okay, yeah, but yeah, for the rotation for this one, C-split's really the big thing you gotta watch out for. Learn the C-split rotation. Learn what you can fit inside C-split, and then be aware that you can end C-split early if like use all your skills you want to, and then you get out of it. Other than that, the only other big thing to pay attention to is don't interrupt your skills with Greatsword 3, and then you are trying to maintain your which skill is it? But you get a buff when you do it when you use one of your shatters. Where is that one? Oh wait, never mind. That was on Power Virtuoso. You don't have that on Chronomancer. So you actually don't have to worry about your timer, the timing for that then. Yeah, so the big thing for it is really just making sure you don't interrupt your skills with Greatsword 3, and then learn the C-split thing. That's like the big thing you have to learn for on Chronomancer. So the C-split thing, that's just takes practice. You just got to know what it is. I would recommend learning both the sword C-split, what you do on sword when you're on C-split, and the Greatsword one on C-split, because depending on what's going on in the fight, you may want to use it on one or the other. And you really don't want to have it be where it's like you don't know what to do if you use it on the different weapon. Yeah, so for this one, for your shatters, so unlike Virtuoso, your blade songs had cast times. Your shatters on Chronomancer and Mirage and Mesmer, for that matter, are all instant cast. So you can cast those things while you're using other abilities. So as soon as you hit 3 clones, you want to use your F1. If your F1 is used, and you get another 3 clones, you want to use your F2. Use your F4 defensively. Use your F3 for CCs, and use your C-split to maximize effect. So you do want to make sure like you have a bunch of stuff available to use when you go into C-split. Yeah, so because your clones or because your shatters are instant cast, you can be casting a skill and use C split, and it'll remember that skill as being uncast. And when it ends, you can use it again. Now, if you exit C split when you're casting a skill, then like it won't reset it back to because you were casting it. It basically is going to be looking at when you the finished state of the skill when C split starts or ends. Yeah, so if you are in the middle of a cast, you can cast C split, and then that skill will be back again when it ends, and you can use it again. Yeah, and then if you're playing quickness or alacrity, even if you don't have clones, and when you're inside C split, make sure you're using F1 through F4. Use all of them, because even without any clones, you're still giving out another second of boons. So if you're doing quickness or alacrity and you're inside C split, use what clones you have, and then use your other skills, just to give out a little bit more boons. Yeah, as I said, I run pretty much the same rotation when I'm playing boons, and boons generally aren't a problem. You can get extra boons, like if you're using Signum of Ether on the Greatsword instead, because you get 2 clones per, stuff like that. But as I said, like running the Signum of Ether on sword, that's a newer benchmark video than they had before. Like if you run the boon rotation, even on DPS, that same thing will still work. The only difference, again, is that you get your clones back a little bit slower from your phantasms when you're on DPS, because Chrono Phantasm, they're going to get that extra phantasm spawn. So, if you look here for, like, my swordsman, again, if you look, Zoe, if you move up a little bit, for Chrono Phantasma, when you spawn the swordsman, it attacks, it despawns, and then then another one will spawn, and then it'll attack again, right there. So likewise with Greatsword, they spawn, they do their attack, they go away, they come back, and they do their attack again, and then you get your clones back. So they're a little bit slower. Versus if you're running the quickness or alacrity traits, they do their attack once and they immediately turn into clones. Yeah, for Chronomancer, I would recommend looking at the write-ups for what Snowcross has on their site for what to do inside C-Split. Look at the videos and then practice it. Okay. If you can get the C-Split rotation down, after that, everything else should be pretty easy to do. Like, Chronomancer used to be considered one of the easiest rotations in the game. But that was back on the focus build. Greatsword is a little bit harder. All right, got any other questions?
Let's see. You have any heal Chrono stuff that you want to?
I would wait till Rifle comes out.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
There is a heal build right now that it can heal, but not very well. But once you get the Rifle, it should be actually pretty interesting what you can do with that. Like the heal virtuoso thing I was talking about, it heals yourself decently okay, but the AoE heals like only every like 10 seconds until actually, now that they changed the inspiration line a little bit, it might be able to do a little bit better, but you really want the Rifle for a heal mesmer.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, otherwise it sounds like kind of like went over stuff pretty well there. Things that obviously are unique about Mesmer in general is the portal is amazing and allows like 20 uses.
Oh.
So, which is
I guess we should talk about other utilities that like what other utilities just swap into.
And kind of stuff that Mesmer does, like Mimic and Blink and and the portal and feedback are all big ones that Mesmer will use. Feedback.
Do I still have my skills.net up? Yeah, I do. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, so other useful utilities. Portal. Portal is a lot of the reason why people bring Mesmers on runs, because you can move your entire squad from point A to point B instantly. Really, really useful on Kadim 1 for getting to the pylons and back faster. Really useful for getting past the jumping puzzle at the end. when you're on the last phase. You need it for Kadim 2 if you're pylon kiting. It's useful in a lot of the other fights too, depending what tactics you're using. Though this obviously depends on your team, because if your team doesn't know what to do with it, or like why you're using it, then kind of pointless, right? Feedback, instant cast, reflect, or that's ground targeted. So Matthias, pretty useful. If you change your settings to go to, there is a setting under combat movement where you can snap ground target at current target. Because feedback is a ground target, you can do that, and as long as you've got Matthias targeted, this will always put the feedback right on top of him with him centered on it. So if you're running to a well or you're dropping off a firebomb, you can cast feedback as long as Matthias is targeted, and like it'll still go on him even though like you're running away from him. So
Nice.
just you got to kind of get used to doing that. I sometimes like I only use that setting for Matthias nowadays if I'm running feedback, because otherwise, like your feedback's just going to go where your mouse is. So do keep that in mind if you have that setting turned on or off. Let's see what else do I see. Mantra distraction if you need extra CCs. So this one, it does 150 CC per cast. So you can do 300 CC basically if you just double tap this almost instantly. And it's got a 12-second cooldown. And the cool thing about this one is if you used your F3 and then you recharge this, it'll reduce your F3 by 15 seconds. So if your group's like really min-maxing on your CC usage for your squad, like you can incorporate into like using your F3, then using double these, and then you reset, or you reset 15 seconds off of your time sync or off of your F3 to get so it's ready for like the next time you need a CC skill. So that could be pretty useful on like Samurag or Salazar if used effectively. Mantra concentration, AoE stability, and it also gives Aegis when you recharge it. One thing to note, the stun break is only on yourself. This is not an AoE stun break. There's only a handful of AoE stun breaks in the game, like the Firebrand Elite Mantras one. There's a shout on Ranger that does one.
There is.
And
man, I should know that. I know. I think there's a shout on Tempest that does.
oh yeah, and then there's the air, why can't I remember the name of it? It's the air one, the one that Gale Song used to do, but that doesn't do it anymore.
On Ellie.
Yeah, it's on Tempest.
It's called that one.
Eye of the
Storm. Yeah.
Yeah, so this one's an
one.
AoE stun break. But yeah, there's only a few AoE stun breaks in the game, and this one is not one of them. So keep that in mind if you're trying to use this. It'll stun break yourself, but it will not stun break other players. So if you're trying to prevent them from getting CC'd, you need to apply the stability to them before they get CC'd. Mantra Resolve, I don't see this in PvE much anymore, but it's a good Connie cleanse. Maybe it'll be more useful when like Heal Mesmer comes back around.
Yeah.
Blink, 1200 range, teleport, also a stun break, instant cast. Pretty good skill, especially for when you need it.
Great for some of the mechanic handling parts in various fights.
I haven't seen Mimic used in PvE in a long time, though it does have its uses. If you're doing portal strats on like Escort, you want to use Mimic because you can get double portals out basically. Though with how this one works though is that so if you use this on a portal, the portal would be instantly reset, but the cooldown that portal would have gotten gets applied to Mimic instead.
And you need to use that when you're doing the portal exit, right?
Yeah.
So
you drop
exit Mimic.
Yeah, when you use the portal exit, the flip over skill for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Mimic with Blink is used for cheesing things like Spirit Run, and I actually
if you want to get double blinks,
Mimic Blink Mimic for the cave at the beginning of Escort if you don't know the way to hip hop around it. Like I don't.
Phantasm Defender's got some uses actually, but it's more if you're trying to min-max stuff. Because like the way this thing works, it'll taunt everything around it, and every attack that hits, it can get up to 10 stacks for every time it gets attacked, and then it will basically, when it does its attack, it'll do 50% increased damage for every attack that it blocked, up to 10. So it can actually get a pretty big one, and you get a clone afterwards too. But yeah, I haven't really seen it used in a while.
Yeah.
I like using it in
there's actually
dungeons
2
when
shield
people are-
phantasms in the
people are
game, which is
bad
kind
in
of annoying.
dungeons.
Sorry, what, Tracy?
I like using the defender in dungeons because people are bad in dungeons.
There was a point where we used to use this for the taunt on it. Because there's some modifiers in the game that you get higher like modifiers, like per Condi, for instance. This is an extra Condi. It also counts as when something that's taunted, they're counted as CC'd the entire time. So which one was it? Oh, we used it for this, for superiority complex. So if you use a defender and your target gets 3 seconds to taunt on it, everybody else that has superiority complex on it will get that 10% bonus crit damage increase.
Okay.
And then under 50%, then you get it all the time. But above 50%, yeah, you can use a defender to proc that for 3 seconds. And if you're running Chrono Phantasma, then it'll proc twice.
Veil is not really used super often, but technically could be.
If you
not
want stealth,
great. Yeah, it's better to use Mass and Viz probably.
Well, the thing is that Mass and Viz has a 40-second cooldown.
Oh yeah.
While Veil has a 72-second. But the thing what you can do is you can drop the Veil on the ground, and then you can swap it off to something else before the fight starts.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing with Mass and Viz. You can cast Mass and Viz and swap it off. You'll still have the cooldown, but like you'll get the skill back later in the fight. Well of Precogs also very nice.
Yeah, what's that used for? Because I've heard people say Well of Precog like before, but
it's
I
an
can't
AoE
remember what
Aegis.
it was used for. Okay, just for Aegis. Like
Yeah,
for
it's an
your
AoE
group.
Aegis.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can
That can
drop
be
this
handy
for like Deimos for an Aegis.
Yeah.
You can use it on Spirit Run, or not on Spirit Run, on the Rainbow Road for the Aegis.
yeah,
The stability is, I don't remember. Oh, actually, let me just check in game.
Ooh, pulsing
Is,
Aegis specifically. That is nice.
The Aegis I know is AoE. I don't remember if the stability was or not.
Yeah. I would think it should be. I mean, I can just.
Nope. It's just the stability is only in yourself. So what's cool about Precog though? So if you look at your other things, it usually does like Well of Action. It gives the boons when the well ends, right? Okay. Well of Calamity. It does the like it'll do cripple. It'll do cripple and weakness on each pulse, and then Well of Precog. It does Aegis per pulse. So this will actually do 3 Aegises separated by a second each.
Yeah, that's wild.
So it actually does 3 blocks on here for the full duration, which is actually really, really nice. But the stun break and the stability, that again is on you.
What about?
And then you got Well Senility, which is a boon strip. It's also a CC, so I guess you need more CC. You could do this. But yeah, I don't really know why you would use this for it. What is kind of cool though, it'll do 3 boons strip when it's done, but because it's also a CC, since you're running the domination line, you'll remove another 2 boons. So I haven't really seen anyone use this for boon strip, just because like when you're on Chronomancer, every single one of your CCs already does a boon strip anyways. Maybe if you're running Virt and you really need a boon strip, I guess you can do that.
It's a Chrono skill.
Inspiration used to be really cool, but not really any longer.
Oh yeah, Illusion
It
of
used
Life.
to-
If you want to troll people.
Well, Inspiration used to share all your boons onto everybody around you at the durations that you had. So it was like
Yeah.
super overpowered.
That used to be like
But
a primary build. Yeah, I remember that.
but they nerfed that.
Yeah.
We already talked about the elites.
Yeah. Did you?
Your heal skills, Signet of Ether is just your primary one you bring just because it resets your phantasms. Well of Eternity is actually really nice. It's a really, really big team heal, but you're giving up resetting your phantasms for it. So that's a really big hit for both the DPS builds and the boon support builds. So you probably are never going to drop this
Yeah.
because you're giving up too much. But
Maybe if you're roaming in PvE and want to have a greater heal available to you and you're okay with dropping the damage, I could see how you might grab it. Because, PvE solo roaming around, like, you don't have to have
yeah,
the
I'm
most
more thinking in terms of
optimized, but-
raids though. So
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I try to mention some other things too here.
yeah.
But our main focus
Think of
is on
Ether's
endgame
too-
PvE.
Signet of Ether is just too good. Well of Eternity was really good for like maybe we'll see this come back. Like
Ooh, for
if there's
heal.
a rifle healing chrono.
Yeah.
Because it's a really really big team heal.
It probably will come
And
back.
it's a Condi
then.
cleanse. So
Yeah, and did that also have boon strip on it? No, it didn't. Okay.
it has a Condi cleanse.
Yeah. Illusion of Life, which is in the main utils. I can't remember if you
That's a
mentioned that one.
PvP skill.
That one is super funny because you just troll people with it. Don't actually do it.
So it basically
PvE
gives
endgame,
the
you'll just
same
kill your friends.
effect. It gives the same effect that Vengeance gives on a
Yeah,
warrior.
the
downstate
the
3.
downstate, yeah,
So you get 15 seconds of life,
and that's it.
and now I don't
Unless you
remember.
kill
Does this
the
put you?
boss, then
Does this
maybe
put you
you'll live.
back into downstate, or
No,
does
I-
it
It
kill
does
you?
just put you back into a down state. It does not kill you, which means that it gives your
Oh.
team more time to revive you.
That's
Alright, they
actually
changed it, so-
useful then.
This used to just fully kill you. If you didn't kill something, it used to just fully kill you.
Yeah, which is what the way warrior works.
is-
Because that's actually useful because you could reposition yourself, like you're saying, Tracy, and actually be able to get easily healed by your allies.
So I can see uses for this. So the rifle has like a single man portal that you can shoot at people. So if someone's in downstate, you could shoot the portal at them, drop illusion of life on them, so they could take the portal and they'll go back in downstate
Yeah.
where they're at.
That'll
I
be
can see something
cool.
like that happening.
That'll make heal Mesmer a little bit like Scourge.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's only like it's ground targeted, so it's gonna. It's not a bear. It's like I don't know. It's just stupid because the other classes they have ranged revives.
Yeah.
Like Ellie has a range revive, Necro has a range revive. Like all the other abilities on other classes, they just revive your ally. This one, you only get them up temporarily, which is kind of dumb. They need to buff this. Why is this one so bad compared to the other classes?
Yeah, I feel like now that they're going to go towards having like a proper like heal chrono, I think it would be ideal for them to change that to just be an actual like revive. Although then like the name of it won't really make sense because it's not an illusion. Like you are alive now.
Make it be powered by clones or something like that. So
Yeah.
when you use it for like every clone that's consumed, it'll revive your ally for a bit more or something like that.
Yeah, something.
I don't know. Illusion of Life is it's like compared to the other class revives,
Mm-hmm.
it sucks. Yeah, like Mesmer has always been like the king of utility because it has portal and it has blink. So the only other class and it's got like stealth too. So the only other class that comes close to that is like Thief. Like Thief has Thief has the shadow portal now, but that can only do 5 people. It has stealth. It has a blink also. So Thief is kind of there. But portal is just so useful because it can cart around your entire squad. Like I think the cap on the is like 20 people or something like that. But the nice thing about portal is you can go in it and you can go back and forth. One thing to know about portal, if you're on a portal and it's not letting you take it, walk off then walk back on. That usually fixes it.
Wow, the virtuoso heal is kind of nice for yourself if you were out PvE roaming. I always like to try to play around with the default. spec skills when I'm first like learning a class, just to kind of, or learning a specific spec, just kind of like get familiar with them. Even though I don't think any of the Virt skills, it used to have Rain of Swords in the build, right?
You said what?
Did the power, or maybe it is the power Virt one, does have Rain of Swords in it.
It can. They replaced that with yeah, the power chronomancer does, or power Virt does have Rain of Swords.
Oh yeah, it does. There we go. I was on the wrong template.
So the thing with Rain of Swords is that like this should have been okay for Kandi because every attack it does is a blade skill, which will proc bleeding. But it's not better than Signet of Illusion, which can reset all your blade songs. So it's kind of dumb that for Virtuoso, like you can legitimately run 5 signets on Virtuoso and it would be fine.
It's silly, but it's great at the same time. Like, I'm glad that it's not like all builds in the game can just run on full signets, but I am glad that there's at least one build that can.
I don't know. Yeah, the Virtuoso skills, like, it actually looks like Virtuoso was originally designed to be a power spec because all of its utility skills are all power based.
They're all power.
And then they gave us Jagged Mind in Blood Song.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense. Maybe they were like, oh, it's just going to be a little bit of bleeding on top. Nope.
Yeah, if you guys have not made your legendary rune, don't forget to do that before the next major patch hits so you get your free relic. Because they did announce that you only need to make 1 rune to get the free relic. It actually makes me wonder what it's going to cost to craft the relic.
Yeah, since it's so easily like obtainable for the most part.
Well, it's going to be, people are going to be so pissed. Well, actually, I don't think they should, because like if you really care about legendary, you already would have the runes. But it'd be really funny if it's like, well, we gave the relic to everybody for free if they made a rune, so we're going to make it really cheap to craft. And there are people spending a lot of money making the runes right now because the runes are super expensive.
I'm in shock at your gold amount and how much you have to pick up at the TP. Oh my God.
I made 45,000 gold from selling my charms since yesterday.
How did you have so many?
You donate
Well, I had a lot of Winter's Day for Brilliance charms, and then the price on them didn't really go up. But yeah, people are paying almost 9 gold for a Mystic Aspect right now on the trading post, and even to craft it right now, it's like it's over 7.5 gold to make a Mystic Aspect if you're buying the charms. Right, it used to be 2 gold. So, because people waited, and it's like, if you haven't made it, I wouldn't make it right now. I would wait like another week. You just have to make sure you make it before the mini X-Pack patch comes out. That's all.
Which is in 32 days. You can look in the Wizard's Vault at the special tab, and it'll tell you how many days are remaining, and that's usually when the next patch is going to be.
Yeah, so just make sure you make your rune before this time runs out, so you get your relic. But everybody's like buying all their stuff now, and you can just wait. just wait until wait 2 weeks, and then people will probably panic in the last week and start buying them up again. But like right now is not a good time to buy them. It's like everything's super expensive.
Mm-hmm. But, yeah, unless anyone has any other questions about Chrono or Virt, that pretty much covers it.
Yeah, if you need help on the rotation, just grab me and we can sit down and go over it.
Definitely. I might even take you up on that on Chrono. I keep meaning to learn Chrono, and I just haven't. So I feel like I really need to because it's getting back into the land of OP.
Yeah, the only problem right now is like we're getting another balance patch in like this coming Tuesday.
Oh yeah.
So everything's going to change again. So like
that's why I can't.
I'm
keep
pretty
up
sure
with builds anymore.
I'm pretty sure Boon Chrono will still be good, but will Power Chronomancer be worth it compared to other classes? Still, we don't know. Okay, well, if no more questions, that's all I've got.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming and for teaching us just like mesmer things, since I know very little about mesmer.
Getting healthy.
Yeah. We've got next week. What do we have next week? Let me look at my phone. We've got a thief one and a ranger one, or excuse me, not ranger. Thief and warrior one coming up. I know we've got thief class with Iskarel, who manages most of the thief builds on Snowcrows. That'll be next Friday. And then we have a warrior class in here somewhere that apparently I didn't put in my phone, so let me check.
Sharp blade, sharp monk.
No.
Warrior class will be
Endurance running low.
February 16th, and that is going to be with Narsen. Let me actually put that in my phone.
You should ask him a lot of questions about Bladesworn.
You should know a lot about Bladesworn.
Well, he does, but he like hates Bladesworn right now
Why?
because he doesn't like how it's playing right now.
Oh, okay.
So what's crazy about the Virt opener, and when you really get down to it, like I am behind an entire Blade song right now because I mistimed some of my skills at the very beginning.
Sharp blade, sharp monk.
So it can actually get really fast for your opener, but that's really only if you're like really trying to like push it. Yeah, I said this is a super easy rotation. Oh god. My blade songs aren't going off because I have the auto attack turned off.
Getting healthy.
Okay, that is so weird. Earlier I couldn't get above 32, but just now I got 36 on the dueling. What the heck?
Aw. No worries, Kai. I hope you can get some good sleep and that you feel better later. Thanks for hanging out. I think I will go ahead and end the stream there, since we have basically kind of like gone over everything. And then, you know, if people are gonna hang out at the Golem and Enko has more time, you guys can discuss some more Virt things or Chrono things. But yeah, thank you for those who came and hung out and watched.